one-step equations, OSE, with negative fractions. Now, the key here is going to be remembering how to add and subtract negative numbers. So let's do a few examples of that first. If I had 3 minus 1, what's that equal?
Negative 2.
3 positive 3 minus 1.
Oh. Wait, is that negative 1?
That would be 2.
Oh,
right?
So if it was the other way around.
Yeah, what if it was the other way around? 1 minus 3. That would be negative 2. And how do you know that? Yeah, 3 is like bigger than 1, right? So what we actually have to do is we actually have to do 3 minus 1 and then just flip the sign. This is going to be really important too, remembering that. Okay. We don't really know 1 minus 3. We know 3 minus 1, and we know this is the opposite. Okay, let's do a few more practice. What if I had negative 2 minus 2?
Negative minus 4.
Yeah, negative 4. So this is just like adding. Because I have negative 2 and another negative 2. So that's just 4, but it's negative because these were negative.
So it's like subtraction equals multiplication.
Make sure you're writing all of these down. Negative 3 minus 6. Negative 9. And then there's one other tiny little trick to these. What if I had 3 plus negative 1? This is just the same thing as 3 minus 1. Right? This equals this. So, it would be 2. What if I had 1 plus negative 3? 1 plus a negative 3. It's the same thing. Plus a negative is just minus. So that's the same thing as this one. Negative 2. Make sure you get all these examples in 2 minutes. What if I had negative 2 plus another negative 2? Same thing as this. So it's negative 4. What if I had, here's kind of a tricky one, 2 minus negative 2? What happens here? 2 minus negative 2? That actually equals 2 plus 2, which is 4. 2 minus negative 2 equals 2 plus 2. So we have some rules to this, right? If we're subtracting a lower number from a bigger number, we just do the subtract. If we're subtracting a bigger number from a smaller number, we flip it around and subtract it, and then just flip the sign of our answer. So 1 minus 3 is 3 minus 1, but it's a negative of 3 minus 1. If we have two negative numbers, we just add them together. Or if we subtract a number from a negative number, we add them together. And the answer is negative. And if we do plus a negative, that's the same thing as minus. And minus a negative is the same thing as plus. So let's actually write those rules into the notes for today. Right? So we say to subtract a bigger number from a smaller number flip it around. And make your answer negative. So 2 minus 5 is negative of 5 minus 2. Because this is what we're actually saying. 5 minus 2 is 3. So our answer. The rule here, when we have two negative numbers, we add them and make our answer negative. And there's two ways that this can look like, right? When we have two negative numbers, this could be negative 1 minus 1, which is negative 2. Or it could look like this, negative 1 plus negative 1. These are the same thing. So these are the two rules that are going to be really important. Subtracting a bigger number from a smaller number, we flip it, and we make our answer negative. If we're subtracting two negative numbers, we add them and make our answer negative. All right? Let's do some algebra.
Don't erase the second part.
I will. I'm going to do some algebra. You guys ready?
No.
X plus 1 and 1/2 equals 0. What's my first step? What's my first step here? Subtract 1 1/2. X equals, what is 0 minus 1 1/2?
1.5.
It's negative 1 1/2. Right? We're this far below 0, so we're negative 1 1/2. What if I had this? Y plus 3 2/3 equals 1 and 1/3. Now we're going to have to remember those rules. I'm going to subtract 3 2/3. Okay, that's great. I have y equals. That's what I want. Well, let's look here. This number is bigger. Right? 3 is bigger than 1, so 3 2/3 is definitely bigger than 1 1/3. The quantity of it is larger. Right? So, what I'm actually going to do, watch this really carefully, and then write it down in your notes. I'm going to make my answer negative. And then I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to do 3 2/3 minus 1 1/3. So I flipped, and I made my answer negative. Now it's just like all the problems you guys have been doing. You guys have done this. 3 2/3 minus 1 1/3. What is that? 2/3 minus 1/3 is 1/3. And 3 minus 1 is minus 1. What's 3 minus 1? 2. So my answer is just negative 2 1/3. Look how easy that is when we flip it. Super easy. All you have to remember to do is flip the negative. Flip the negative.
You do another one.
We're going to do like a couple more. Let's do another one like that. So n plus 2 and 4/5 equals 1 and 2/5. Okay. I'm going to subtract my 2 and 4/5. Okay, what I'm going to notice immediately is this number is bigger. This number, 2 and 4/5, without the negative, is bigger than 1 and 2/5. So I know I'm going to have to flip it. And I'm just right away going to make my answer negative as soon as I flip it. 2 and 4/5 minus 1 and 2/5. Because if I just flip it, then I'm going to get the wrong answer. I have to flip it and make my answer negative. I have to do both of those things at once, or else I'll get the wrong answer. Now look, 4/5 minus 2/5
Going too fast.
is 2/5, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So my answer, I know you're still writing, my answer is negative 1 and 2/5. So as you write this, what you might want to do is write what we did, right? Flip and then negative answer.
So it's basically you just flip those two and then you just
That's
do
so
the regular
simple.
thing,
We
right?
flip, we switch what we're subtracting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of subtracting 2 and 4/5, we're subtracting 1 and 2/5.
And so you just.
We're not flipping the fraction, so don't get
No,
that
no,
confused.
just like
But
you move them.
yeah, we move them, we like switch them.
And then you just do the problem. And it's easy, right?
Right. And the reason we do that is because of this whole rule about 1 minus 3, right? That's negative 2. 3 minus 1, negative. So it's that same rule that we're using. It's kind of how we do negative numbers when we're adding and subtracting.
That seems pretty straightforward, but if we had this in our homework, would we have to show the work of flipping it?
You don't necessarily have to show this. You could like do it backwards here or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're going to do another example now. So we could have this with borrowing. And it's just the same thing, but then we have to remember to borrow. So here's an example with borrowing. What if I had n plus 4 and 1/7 equals 2 and 3/7. So I'm going to do my same steps. Subtract 4 and 1/7. Subtract 4 and 1/7. Let's write that down. I'm going to have n equals, and when I see that these are negative numbers, which I can already see because I know 4 is bigger than 2, I'm going to leave myself a little extra room. Okay, so now this number is bigger than this number, right? 4 and 1/7 is bigger than 2 and 3/7. So I'm going to flip them. and 1/7 minus 2 and 3/7. And when I flip them, I'm going to make my answer negative so that I don't forget to do that. But now what happens? I can't take 3/7 away from 1/7. You guys have done this before though. What do I do when I can't take my fraction? I borrow. I make the 4 into a 3. I borrowed 7/7 and I have 1/7. So how many sevenths do I have now?
2 and 2/7.
If I borrowed, just in this number here, if I borrowed 7 and I already had 1,
14.
7 plus 1 is 8. And then I have 8/7 minus 3/7, which is 5/7. And 3 minus 2, which is 1. So my answer is 1 and 5/7, right?
Yeah.
Not quite. Why not?
Well, because it's a negative.
Yeah. Don't forget when you flip it, so your answer is going to be negative. So n equals -1 and 5/7. Let's do a couple more examples like that. So with borrowing. Example 2 with borrowing. K plus 5 and 2/5 equals 2 and 4. All right. Subtract 5 and 2/5. What do you notice right away? It's bigger. So let's leave ourselves some extra room and immediately make our answer negative. Then we're going to flip it. Instead of subtracting that way, we're going to subtract this way. Why can we do that? How come we can just flip it? But I'm going to get the wrong answer if I flip it, aren't I? This isn't the same as this. Yeah, right. Because of this negative. So I can flip it because I made this negative. I can't just flip it and not do anything else. Because then I would get the wrong answer. It's like saying 3 minus 1 is 1 minus 3. It's not. Those are different. But they're the same number with a different sign. Okay, so I flipped it. I made my answer negative. 2/5 minus 4/5. Oh, okay. Can't do that. I'm going to borrow. So I'm going to make this a 4. I'm borrowing 5/5. Right? However many fifths I have, I'm borrowing. And I already have 2. 5 plus 2 is 7/5. 7 minus 4. How many fifths do I have? 7 minus 4. 3. 4 minus 2 is 2. Oh, I'm so glad I wrote this negative here already, because now I don't have to remember it at the end. So my answer K equals negative 2 and 3/5. What? The more you know. The more you know. All right, Z plus 7 and 1/9 equals 3 and 8/9. Actually, I want to make this a 6. 5. Let's make this. Okay. Z plus 5 and 1/9 equals 3 and 8/9. We're going to subtract 5 and 1/9. What do I notice as I'm doing this subtraction? This is bigger than this. 5 and 1/9 is bigger than 3 and 8/9. So, I'm going to leave myself some extra room. I'm going to make my answer negative right away, and then I'm going to flip 5 and 1/9 minus 3 and 8/9. This we can do, but we do have to borrow. 1/9 minus 8/9, not going to work, so I'm going to make this into a 4. I borrowed 9/9. I already had 1/9. How many ninths do I have now? 1 plus 9, 10. When I subtract 8 from 10, I have 2 ninths. 4 minus 3 is 1.
Do you always have to borrow?
No. You only have to borrow when this fraction is bigger than this fraction.
Just like the other way.
And then the last type I want to do, or that last type I showed you for subtracting. So what if I had p minus 2 and 1/3 equals negative 1 and 1/3. Actually, sorry, this should be p plus 2 and 1/3 equals negative 1 and 1/3. I'm going to subtract 2 and 1/3. Okay, this is bigger, but wait a second. This is negative and this is negative. So what am I actually doing here?
Basically adding.
I'm basically adding these together. So I would have p equals,
So you wouldn't switch them?
you don't need to switch them because you're adding. But is that my answer? I just added them together. Oh wait, no I didn't. I just added them together.
No, you have to add the negatives.
But yeah, the answer is negative. Because I'm adding 2 negative numbers, so I get a bigger negative. Okay, let's see if I can do one without making any mistakes. Alright, x plus 4 and 1/5 equals 2 and 3/5 negative.
So,
Okay.
so you're gonna minus
Subtract 4 and 1/5. What do I notice?
Well, there's a negative.
They're both negative, so I'm actually adding
Oh, so
3/5 plus, right? So when I have 2 negatives, yeah.
So if they're negatives, you have to add them.
If they're both negative, I actually add the numbers.
but you
Okay.
don't have to flip them.
But if one is negative, right,
Yeah.
then the other one's positive, then I subtract. But what we're doing over here is, if I have a negative that's bigger, like this number is bigger than this, then what I actually do is I flip them. So I flip these whoosh, and make my answer negative. And we showed at the beginning, it was like this. 4 minus 1 is 3, but 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So it's the same thing, it's the same number, just a different sign. So that's what we're doing with our fractions. We're flipping them and then we're making them right. But here we have 2 negatives, so we're adding 3/5 plus 1/5 is 4/5. 2 plus 4 is 6. They were both negative, so my answer.
Do make up one that we have to like reduce the answer.
We're not going to do that today, but that is, the next step will be if we have different denominators, or if we have to reduce. Okay.
Yeah, just bring this.
Question.